Hey, welcome low ego action heroes and phoenixes. This is Debbie Levitt from dcx and welcome to our Wednesday show, Ask Me Anything. You are welcome to ask me anything. I'll certainly give you an answer if I know the answer, or at least have an opinion or perspective, or can give some advice. This is totally free, and you are welcome to ask what you like. You can ask in the chat, which will pop up on the screen like this, or you can send stuff anonymously to dcx.to/q, which will come into my email anonymously. Also a good way to ask longer questions. And I want to remind everybody to please register for our upcoming 3-day conference. You can register for as many days as you like in case all 3 don't appeal to you. But check it out. There's a link from the dcx.com homepage and navigation so you can learn more about the conference. It's completely live and online in late May. So here we are in mid-March and it is coming up. This is, okay, we're getting all the notifications that we are live. That's good. You can send a question to dcx.to/q anytime you like, 24 hours a day, and I save them. I catch them and hold on to them, and then I answer them usually on Wednesdays. So we did get a question ahead of time. So I'm going to start with that one. If you have a question, yours will be next. And again, no charge. So why don't you ask anything that's on your mind? We can cover CX, UX, product strategy, difficulties at work, and we can talk about leaving tech and finding other jobs and personal development. So all topics are welcome. And if I can't answer, I'll let you know. All right. So the question that came in ahead of time looks like this. It says, is there any such thing called best practices in UX? I recently learned there's no such thing called best practices because every company is different. Love to hear your thoughts on this. I would have to say that I disagree with this. I think that nearly everything on the planet has best practices. There are best practices in how to cut a pizza. There are best practices in riding a mountain bike through the woods. There are best practices in communicating with other humans. So I think best practices are a term that we use when there is a good, better, or best way to do something. And that could be anything. It could be simple, everyday stuff. I could sip this water from the cup, or I could hold it way over my head and pour and hope I get it in my mouth. One of those is a best practice. Thank you for laughing at my jokes. So I would say there are always best practices. Whoever told you there aren't best practices, I'd love to know who said that. If you're comfortable sending in a note to dcx.to/q, I'd love to know where you heard that there's no such thing as best practices. Because there are a lot of weird things that are on LinkedIn and social media that say things like, there's no UX process. Yes, there is. There's no best practices, or there are laws of UX that you must follow or else. It seems that there's very strange advice on these ends of the spectrum. So let's talk about best practices in UX and do they exist? So I would say they absolutely exist. In some cases, you're going to find that you have best practices for research. There are research best practices. There are writing best practices. There are information architecture best practices. Hello, KB. KB says everything exists on a spectrum in terms of efficiency. If it doesn't feel like something is better or not compared to something else, your goals are probably not well defined. Yeah, it's another angle on this. So, what about the point being made by the question asking, isn't every company different? Sure, every company is different. Every cup is different. Every sandwich is different. Every mountain bike is different. And every woods is different. That doesn't mean there aren't best practices. That doesn't mean there aren't good ways to do things, better and best ways to do things, etc. Hello, Pumpa Latte. Maybe you have a perspective on this. So first of all, Yes, there are best practices. Should we follow them rigidly and never stray from them and treat them like laws? No. Best practices are good. Oh, hi, Diana. Are good practices. Best practices usually mean that over time we have determined that there are better ways to do things. It's better to drink from the cup than pour it from way over your head and hope it gets into your mouth. So, but that doesn't mean that these are some sort of hard, inflexible rules that we cannot bend or break or create variations of. So first of all, there are best practices. If someone said there aren't, now I'm suspicious of whatever else this person said. Pumpalate says, I don't know what good practices are, but they're definitely not the ones we see on LinkedIn. Oh yeah, let's give a little applause for that. So true. Is my applause going? I hope so. Did you hear applause? I hope that worked. Yeah, LOL for sure. But what about every company being different? Sure, it means that sometimes we have to be flexible with this stuff. This is typically, and I don't think I have this graphic queued up anymore, but this is typically when we talk about being strategic about our process. So let's say that our process is a great human-centered design process. It's got lots of phases and lots of steps. It's a best practice. It's a set of best practices. However, sometimes based on our company or our project or something going on in the moment, we can't follow those best practices 100%. That doesn't mean that we give up. Hi, Arun. That doesn't mean that we give up. That doesn't mean that we tell everybody they suck. It doesn't mean that we tell everybody they have low UX maturity and we think you're bad at this. It just means that we have to be flexible and strategic given the project that we have and the other issues and situations that might complicated, I think is the word I'm looking for. So there are always best practices. How much you use them or apply them will rely on how well you know them and understand them. Have you learned them? Do you understand them? And then number two, can you adjust them when there is something going on with a team or a company or a project where you can't use your best practices? So that's probably what I would say to that. Every company is different. Every company can use best practices. There's nothing that says that, whoa, Uber and Lyft are different companies. They can't use best practices or they can't use the same best practices. They can, but they still might come out with something different because of the way things work at that company, different decisions being made, different strategies, different priorities. Everybody, so best practices doesn't mean we all design the same thing or ask the same research questions. It's really about sets of strategies, tactics, tasks, how we do things. That is among our best practices. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to open up a window that you can't see. And just out of curiosity, everybody knows I'm a curious cat. I'm going to ask Claude the AI, what are human-centered, just to see what it says, we might not agree with it, design best practices. Sometimes AI's got good answers and sometimes AI is a mess. Yeah, so I don't completely agree with this, but we can take a look at it. Let's take the question off the screen. Let's take a look at me. Hi, LinkedIn user. It's not saying your name right now, but hi, LinkedIn user. All right, here I go. I've got Claude up on my screen, so let's share this over. So here's what an AI/LLM thinks are best human-centered design practices. First, it says start with empathy research, but it sounds like it's been trained on a lot of design thinking. So I would say start with generative or discovery research. So it's not that I disagree with the step. I just happen to not love the word empathy for this because you're not researching empathy. Begin by deeply understanding your users through interviews, observations, and immersion in their context. Document needs, pain points, and behaviors without making assumptions. I think that's a generally okay first step. Define clear problem statements. Yes, this is a step I see a lot of people skipping. They assume that they know what people's problems are. They don't even define problem statements, and their problem statements don't even come from good research. Really, we're just following the scientific method here, which I've talked about before. So, step 2, frame challenges as specific actionable problems based on user insights. So again, you're using your step 1 research to define your step 2 problem statements. Good problem statements are user-centered, not solution-focused. I agree. Step 3, co-create with users. I don't like to say co-create with users because it makes people think that they have to bring users into some sort of meeting room and make them draw screens, but I do like the way the step is described. Involve actual users throughout the design process as collaborators, not just testers. Their input should influence key decisions. Again, I don't love having users design, but to me, you are still involving users in the process because you are going to do usability testing with them. And so they might not be doing the design, but they can still be part of the design process. Prototype early and often. I would say that would come even before we're testing on users. Create doesn't have to be low fidelity, could be mid fidelity or high fidelity prototypes to test concepts quickly before investing resources. Rapid learning and iteration. Yes, because of step 3, which I think is out of order here, testing with users. Test with diverse users. Yes. Include participants who represent different abilities, backgrounds, and contexts to ensure inclusive design. Step 6, I see a question coming in. Iterate based on feedback. Consider the ecosystem, make accessibility a requirement, measure impact, document, share learnings. Yeah, so I would say I kind of 90% agree with this. I think this is a nice high-level look at a human-centered design process and therefore human-centered design best practices. So I think if someone says there aren't UX best practices, or there's no such thing, or you can't really use them because each companies are doing different things, I would certainly challenge that. We just got an anonymous question. While I get that ready to put on the screen, let me know in the comments if you have any other thoughts on that or anything you want to add to it. Okay, just getting the next question ready. Thanks to whoever sent it in, as these are anonymous. KB says, oh, it's Saad. Saad, as in my buddy Saad? KB says, I see it as best practices exist as general guidelines, but then the role of the designer is to interpret how that will look in their particular situation. More UX maturity in the org means it'll be easier to do things by the book. Yes, definitely the more mature an organization is and the more it believes in user centricity and customer centricity, the closer we're usually adhering to the best practices. When companies aren't as user or customer centric, when they don't care as much about quality, when they prioritize deadlines over other things, then we tend to see that suffering and we tend to see best practices ignored or corners cut or things like that. So yeah, thank you for that. I think we've got a good chat going on about that. We've got a new question. Don't forget that you can send your questions in at dcx.to/q, or you can put them in the chat. They'll pop up here with your name. And don't forget to register for my upcoming conference, 3 days in late May. You can find it from the dcx.com homepage. Next question says, What are your thoughts on using screen recordings from tools like mouseflow or hotjar for observing how people use web pages or tools? What a great question. Thank you for asking that. It's definitely a topic that we should talk about. So in the past, though not recently, I have used things like Hotjar or some of, there's a lot of competitors out there. So, not sponsored, nobody's paid me to say Hotjar or otherwise. There are many choices out there. In the past, I used those to try to take a look at people's behaviors on pages. Now, typically you get those videos without sound, and with some of the things people type masked. It's turned into stars so that you're not seeing names and identifying information. Now, without the sound and without observing people and being able to ask them questions and follow-up questions, the best we can do is watch someone use things and guess what's going on. So, for example, I once had a client who said, I don't understand. They had an e-commerce website. They said, I don't understand. When I look at my logs and analytics, almost every visit to my website goes on my About Us page. Why? Why aren't they going to my store? Why aren't they placing more orders? And they had Hotjar. They didn't want to pay for research. So I started running Hotjar, again, not sponsored, and I started looking at some of the recordings, and I started watching people click into the About Us, scroll the page really fast, and then either hit the back button or pick the online store. But why? I don't know. At that point, I could only guess. And of course, I had to tell that client, I can't tell you why so many people are hitting your About Us and then either backing out or choosing another page. But I will make some guesses because of the behavior I'm watching. I will guess. I might be wrong, but this is what I think it is. So why don't you try changing this? Put this over here, rename it this, a little bit of navigation, renaming and reordering to see if we could get more people to hit their store rather than our About Us. And it ended up working out for them. I managed to guess pretty well, but that's a chance that I took. I could have been completely wrong. I could have created worse problems for them than I did. So we must remember that while there is some information that we can get from watching those screen recordings, we still don't know why. And we don't have that person there to be able to ask, hi, you've just hit the site. Tell me more about why your first choice was the About Us page. And they might say, oh, well, I'm curious to know more about this company, or I love to read About Us pages before I buy from somewhere. Like, I don't know why. So I would say that these aren't necessarily bad tools. They're tools that I don't use very often. Why? Because I try to get time and budget to do the generative research or evaluative research that will answer our larger questions, which is, you put it here. You put it here. How are people using this web page or website or portal or SaaS system? So that's what we really want to know. How are they doing things? Why are they doing things? And we're really not going to know some of those things without those human interactions where we can then ask people about it. To give you another example, before I read KB's comment, many years ago, I was asked to do a, card sort. A very famous company asked me to do a card sort. And I said, you know what? I think I want to do a moderated card sort with 12 people across your segments. And I want to do an unmoderated card sort with just a lot more people from your segments. So I think we had 53 people do the unmoderated card sort, but then we could look at those results and go, cool, people put these things into these buckets and associated these things, but we didn't know why. I could just say people generally think this goes with this and these things go together and this can be categorized here, but I couldn't tell you why. And the 12 sessions with the humans live with their screen shared, where I had them do the card sort, and then I said, great, now let's talk about why you grouped these things how you did. Walk me through what you did and tell me about why you created these groups. What brings these things together? Obviously, I didn't say all of that. That's too many questions, but you know what I'm saying. And when people started explaining themselves, obviously I got a lot more information, knowledge, data, color. And I was able to say, okay, that helps me explain this thing that I saw from the larger data sample where, okay, people did a thing, but now I have a sense of why they might have done that. And then I can better inform and advise my client and say, people are grouping things this way because this is what they need, or because this is their task, or because of a mental model, ... And Pumpa Lattes put something up, but it looks like my on-screen system choked on it. It was too big to post. So I'll read it out loud in a moment. So KB says, was it something related to it not feeling trustworthy and they wanted to check the About page to get more information before purchasing? Actually, for my story about the people hitting the About page before going into the store, my hypothesis, which again could have been way, way off, it was a total guess. So their navigation at the time had 5 or 6 choices. They had 5 or 6 places you could go on their website. The very first one on the far left was something like our store. Now, what do you think our store is? Turned out it was their About Us page. They thought that our store was going to be about us. My hypothesis was that people were clicking our store thinking they were going into the shopping section of the website, but they were landing on the About Us page. So I said, rename it About Us, put it at the end or towards the end, make the first thing the store, and make sure it's got a really obvious name like our store or shop now or something like that, a clear navigation name with a call to action, and then move the other thing far away, because a lot of people, at least in America, and it was an American store, don't care as much about the About Us. And that seemed to have improved or fixed the problem, was that they'd named their About Us our store. So everybody clicked on that first and then had to back out or go somewhere else. Deanna says, would this be a good place to actually generate questions and get buy-in? Deanna, I don't understand your question, so please re-ask it and we'll take a look at it after Pumpa Latte's question. Let me do a copy paste and get that question up on the screen, though it's on the longer side, so let me drop the font. There we go. All right, so Pumpa Latte's got a follow-up question which says, in my experience, even if we do research, like interviews, I rarely find users who exit the page or do something outside of the happy path. They usually go through the happy path. They complete everything expected. It would be great to actually get in touch with those specific users who have unusual behavior outside of a research project, but due to GDPR and other issues, we can't get back to them. We're not allowed, at least in my company. It pains me so much not to be able to ask. Yeah, and it's hard to know who are those users. We don't have a good way to for a system to say, hey, I just found another one of those users who clicked our store and then clicked away from it and then went somewhere else. It's very hard to track that kind of behavior and then figure out a way to contact those people. I invented something around that many years ago, but I found that it was at the time too expensive to build. It's probably not too expensive now, but I'm hoping this year to file a patent on that. So yes, it would be great to understand, but again, if you can do a good research project and get a good mix or cross section of users. Maybe you will find some of the people who are doing those weird things and you can learn why. When we do research with 4 people, 5 people, we might not end up with those people. Or maybe we need to specifically recruit for people who are less savvy or haven't shopped on our site before. Sometimes better recruiting gives us some of those people who have those behaviors or make those mistakes, and then we can track it down. Okay, so I see what Diana is asking. Let me get this question ready for pasting on the screen. Great conversations today, everybody. Thank you so much for being a part of it. And of course, if you would like to ask your question, please do. They're free. Pumpalate says it's hard to recruit people who are less savvy. They don't hang out in user recruitment platforms usually. Yeah, and again, that's not the only place to get users from. It's yes, recruiting is not easy. Luckily, I now have a patent on that. But again, my patent unfortunately doesn't make it easier for you to find the people. It just makes it easier for you to do everything after that. Probably future show on my patent. Especially since I'd love to sell it. Let's put Diana's question up and zoom in a little bit. Here we go. So Diana says, would this be a good place to actually generate questions and get a buy-in? I mean that observing people using a website without a context seems like a good place to look for questions and convince people to speak to users. I think so. Sometimes hotjar or NPS or customer satisfaction scores or customer support reports or hotjar recordings are some preliminary information that we can use to go back to our team or leaders or stakeholders and say, look, we're seeing these patterns of behavior, but we don't know why. And because we don't know why, we don't know how to fix them. We could try a couple of guesses, but we run the risk that we don't fix the original problem, and we run the risk that we make the problem worse, which were both risks that I took when I advised that customer on their e-commerce navigation. So I think Deanna's right that sometimes these tools that people are running anyway, I've had clients who have come to me with their Google Analytics and said, this is what people are doing. Help. Our conversions aren't where we want them to be. Help us make them better. And we do use that to recommend a good generative or discovery or behavioral research project so that we can figure out what's going on. What are people doing? How? Why? All of these things. So yeah, Diana, I think you've got a good point there. That doesn't mean you'll get the buy-in. You might still find a lot of companies want you to guess based on the hotjar recording or the Google Analytics or something else. And we just have to remind them that we are guessing what's going right and what's going wrong. And we're guessing and hoping and hypothesizing that our change or solution is an upgrade when it might be the same, it might be a downgrade. We just don't know. Not sponsored by watermelon flavored water. Yum yum. Oh, thank you to the person adding me on LinkedIn. Nice to put a name with a name. Thank you, Deanna. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, Wednesday is the time to ask them. I am live and I'm here for you. I like to think of this as kind of public group mentoring, advising, and of course it's totally free. You can ask a question live in the chat. It'll pop up here and it'll have your name on it. If you want to ask a longer or anonymous question, send it to, that's my hand up there, dcx.to/Q. That will be a 1-question survey that comes in completely anonymously. I don't even know your IP number or your country. I really have no idea who anybody is unless you say so. Sometimes people go, hi, it's me, or sometimes people use a catchphrase that helped me know who they are, but I won't share your secret. Oh, that is a notification of this. Oh my gosh. I just have to say, while we wait for another question, I got the wildest email this morning, and these people are writing to me again. Thank you. We will cite you. Yeah, this is so funny. I got an email from Harvard Business School saying that somebody at Harvard Business School, a business school professor is working on a case study. And as part of their case study, they stumbled on a blog post I had written. Does anybody want to guess what year? They want to cite my blog post, and they wanted to know if I would give them permission to cite the blog post. They had to find it in the archive.org Wayback Machine. Does anybody want to guess what year my blog post was from? That these people somehow found and were asking for permission to use in their case study. I'm not even sure the blog post, I'm not even sure that the company I wrote about is still in business. Now I'm curious. I'm going to check. I'd written a blog post about an experience I had. I don't think this is a thing. They must have gone out of business. Yes, this is it. Okay, I found it. Okay. Deanna says 2001. Amy says 2012. Deanna wins. It was a blog post I wrote in 2001. And I want to tell you a little bit about it. Ana Lucia says, what I was taught in uni was that I should never quote anything older than 10 years. Yes. And the thing that I wrote about, I think soon went out of business. And I wonder if that might be part of the case study, which in that case could make it relevant. Like, look, this thing existed. Somebody actually wrote about it. And then it went poof. So this is from 2001. This is for Americans only. Who remembers my cereal, as in breakfast cereal.com? Anybody? We're only going back 25 years on this. Anybody remember mycereal.com? I wrote a blog post about it, and evidently a Harvard business professor stumbled on it. They tracked it down to me. They emailed me, and they said they want my permission to cite it. And I said, oh, go for it. Amy says, I just recently got out of a work situation where one of my product owners was clearly a narcissist. I'm not a psychologist, but they showed all the signs of it, and I have a question. Okay, Amy, let us know. I would love to talk more about narcissism and malignant narcissism. It's an important topic right now. Yeah, Ana Lucia says maybe if it's something that went out of business. Yeah, I don't know what their angle's going to be. I really don't. And I just said I hope they'll share it. I think I said that. Let me go check my email. I want to make sure I said that. I hope that they will share it because that is random. Let me tell them. Please send the case study when it's public. Thanks again. I don't know what they're going to say. But yeah, that was a blast from the past that somebody found a 2001 blog post I wrote. Amy says, do you have any ideas of how to work with a narcissist who's on the product team and you have to work with them? Yeah, we actually did a whole show about this. So let me grab your question and add it to the list of questions. And let's see if we can find this. Give me a second. Let's get Amy's question up here. And I'll have to do a couple of other things. Okay. Question. Okay. Let me open up YouTube and see if I can find my old show on this. Yep, found. Episode 43. Blast from the past. Episode 43 is from May 2020. So, holy cats, it's an oldie. But it has not gone out of style. Let's paste that into the chat room, but let's also talk a little bit about narcissists. So, anyway, if you can't find that, go to YouTube. I searched for dcx narcissist. You can also just search for dcx 43. It's episode 43. That should help you out there. I guess nobody remembers my cereal. Pumpalate says, I remember I got to know you about the LinkedIn post on Amazon delivery and the rest is history. I never left helicopter. Yeah, I think Twitch has a helicopter. I'd have to go over to Twitch and see if I can find a helicopter. Let's see. Oh, because it's an emote. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so let's, so Amy, for starters, I would go to that episode because we had Dr. Seth Finkel on, and those of you who've been friends of the show for a while, you might remember Dr. Seth Finkel. He is a psychologist with, I think, a PhD in psychology. He works as a school psychologist for a school district in Pennsylvania, and so he would know this stuff well. And we took a look at what can you do about this and how can you deal with these people. The problem with narcissists, and especially malignant narcissists, is that it is very hard to ever win. If you are for them and agree with them and praise them and try to raise them up, then you've enabled them. If you are against them and you disagree and you battle with them and whatever, then they see you as an enemy and can sometimes be aggressive or do other things. They're not into critical thinking. They're not usually open to ideas. They're not usually able to negotiate or compromise. We have these losers on Twitch, so now we get to ban this person. Now, why can't I ban this person? That's weird. Twitch is not giving me the option to ban this person because it's their first time chat. I still want to ban this person. Manage suspicious user. Yeah, wow, they really changed this. And it's a mess. Wow, that was much harder than it needed to be. All right. Yeah, I'm still not buying views. So thanks anyway, Twitch user. Ana Lucia says, I'll have to check if you've done a show on how to answer people in a politically correct way in different situations. It would be helpful. Probably that one on malignant narcissists. So, again, I don't know anybody's particular situation with any particular coworker, but especially when I have a difficult coworker or a narcissist or malignant narcissist, I start ramping up documentation. I start trying to record more meetings. Ramp up documentation. After a meeting, I send out a review. This is what we talked about. This is what we decided. This is what we're doing. Because I find that malignant narcissists, well, especially malignant narcissists, but sometimes just plain old narcissists, are sometimes guilty of what I call revisionist history, where you'll meet with them, you'll decide something, and later on they'll say, we never decided that. I didn't want that done. I wasn't for that. Why are you doing this? And so that's when I just start borderline personality disorder too. Yeah, these are separate things. Mutually exclusive. So I will just start doing a lot of documenting. I will try to make sure I understand. If they make a decision, I document the decision. If we have a meeting, I document the meeting. And so I think I would have to know, like, what's an example of something this person did to talk about how I would have tried to handle it. But we must remember that narcissists and malignant narcissists have a very specific playbook that they follow. And again, this is all Googleable. You can go to your favorite search engine or LLM, ask them all about narcissists and or malignant narcissists. The main difference is that malignant narcissists like to see you suffer. A narcissist wants everything to be about themselves. They are the center of everything. They're the best. They're the smartest. They can do everything. They're wonderful. Everybody loves them. And it's a very delusional, strange world. The malignant narcissist goes beyond that into usually a more sociopathic realm where they genuinely want other people to hurt. They are punitive. They are aggressive, etc. BPD as medication, but having to work with someone who went off their meds is somewhat similar, unfortunately. Yeah, BPD, I would say, is not the same. BPD is totally different and totally different entry in the DSM-5. Malignant narcissism and narcissism do not have medication. And in fact, most narcissists and malignant narcissists will never know that they are narcissists. They are sure that they just happen to be great and everybody else around them happens to be inferior. And they very rarely know or can admit that they are narcissist. And you can't take medication for it. So, I think we can all think of many famous narcissists and malignant narcissists. Many of them are famous CEOs or politicians or world leaders. They tend to follow the same playbook. And if we look at some world leaders now and we wonder, why are these people so cruel? Why do they just seem to want to hurt everybody? That's a malignant narcissist playbook. It's not necessarily a dictator playbook or an authoritarian playbook. It's the malignant narcissist playbook, which means when you see people saying, oh yeah, we're going to do a march and we're going to do activism and we're going to hold up signs saying how much this leader is hurting us, and I go, that's totally enabling them. You're accidentally enabling a malignant narcissist when you show that they're hurting you, because then they think, awesome, look how powerful I am. I am exactly who I thought I was. I am so powerful and awesome that I can hurt all these people. It was my plan to hurt all these people. This is going great. So I think Amy and others dealing with narcissists and malignant narcissists, I would have to get an example of what they've done in order to be able to say, here's how I might have handled that, or here's how I've handled things like that in the past. But generally, I start documenting a lot more stuff. I ask a lot more questions. I say, okay, and how will you want this report from me? What information do you expect in the report? What information do you not expect in the report? And sometimes I find that just being logical and factual and neutral is the key, because a narcissist is typically expecting you to either react very favorably to them because they expect the admiration, or they're expecting you to be the enemy. But when I just show up and I'm neutral and I'm logical and I'm factual, they sometimes aren't sure what to do with that, and it's got a does not compute element to it. Amy says, they were just plain old narcissists. They went around our standard processes for giving my UI designer and I work. It fell into the category of dark work that no one else on the team knew about. Well, why didn't it come to light? That's where it sounds like it could have been documented. It sounds like it should have been documented. And if they were going around standard processes, that's when I sometimes bring in my manager and I say, hey, look, we have a standard process for how the teams are going to ask us for work or give us work. And this person is not using that process. Can we please get this person on board with our standard processes? I remember there was one time I was having problems with a narcissist product manager, and I called for a meeting with their manager. And I just said, look, I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble. I want everything to work out well, but I'm having difficulties with getting this person to just follow the simplest standards and processes that we've put in place. And that's all I'm asking of them. I know they won't always agree with me. I know they might not always be a fan of my work, but we have standards, we have processes. I need them to follow them. You would want me to follow your standards and processes. Amy says they would find cool ideas to implement on our app and wanted us to be pixel monkeys and just do what they said. I brought in my manager who talked to her manager, but it continued. Yeah, so that's where your manager and their manager have been ineffective. Sometimes people end up going to HR over this if they think HR is their ally. Sometimes they go to their manager's manager if they think that is going to do. And then I guess another question is, could you have said no? Could you have said, this work is not on our roadmap. This work is just an idea that you want to chase. You are asking us to be your secretary and your assistant, and that's not how this works. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to say no to this work because we have other priorities and we have other things on our roadmap. And if you'd like us to do this work, let's please prioritize it and add it later in the future to the roadmap. KB says, some people will ask for more and more until you say stop or enforce boundaries. Ana Lucia says, just as a curiosity, personality disorders are sometimes hard to distinguish from each other. Antisocial, borderline narcissism, and histrionic are usually considered as a group for a differential diagnosis. I feel like I can tell the difference between those, but I am not a trained professional. I'm just someone who grew up around narcissists and malignant narcissists and know the playbook incredibly well. It's just in my fabric at this point because these are the people I grew up around, my family of origin, for many, many decades until I disconnected from them for my own health and safety. So I think that there's a lot of things that I might have done. I think, and again, I'm not saying these would have worked. You never know. But I would have gone to my manager saying, this is throwing off our other priorities. We're not going to be able to get other work done because this person is introducing cool, wacky, random ideas. We're not going to meet KPIs, we're not going to meet deadlines. There's got to be something you can tie to other things in the business that would go further than this person isn't following standards. That should be enough, but it's not. When I was at Macy's, there were a couple of teams I was on that had some pretty severe narcissists. These people would never listen to me. They would never follow advice or standards. They would go and do their own designs, and they were not on the UX team. Thank you, Deanna, for the follow. And it was very hard to get them on board. And when I went to the manager, and this was I was being lent to another team, so it wasn't my usual manager, it was a different manager. When I went to that temporary manager, his response, and I'll never forget it for the rest of my life, his response was literally, "You're a big girl, figure it out." Well, now I had more problems. Amy said, I started to push back, documented her actions, put her requests in emails, and added others on the team to it, but she always pushed back and it seemed like no one on the team cared. Well, then if no one on the team cares, what's wrong with doing that work? That's the problem. if nobody cares whether you're doing work A or work B, and your manager doesn't care if you do work A or work B, can you give yourself permission to also not care? I mean, the problem is it sets up a power dynamic that we don't want. We don't want to be the product manager's pixel monkey or assistant or things like that. So I think that I would probably be going to managers and saying, look, this sets me up to fail, and this sets up a power dynamic I don't want. I'm not this person's assistant. I'm not here to design whatever they dream of today. We have serious business initiatives and goals. We have serious business KPIs, and I can't be chasing every idea this person dreams up. But I think ultimately you did the right thing by trying to get yourself off the project, and that's normally what I would try as well. But I would also give a lot of information to other people and remind them that, like, I can get off this project, but then you're going to put someone else in this position. It was infringing on other deadlines. I probably should have made that clearer. Yeah, sometimes I'll draw out a timeline and say, well, you needed this from me, hey, it's mid-March. You needed this from me by the end of March. And then you're expecting this from me in April because we have these deadlines and KPIs and projects and initiatives. If I stop and I try your cool feature, then that pushes that out. I'm not going to meet your deadlines. And you know what's going to happen? Someone's going to look at me and think I'm bad at my work. Someone's going to look at me and think, Amy can't meet deadlines. Amy doesn't do her work on time. I can't run that risk. I'm going to have to say no to your side project because I have these already established deadlines, and these match our strategies and goals. I'm going to have to do this first. If you'd like me to pursue those other ideas, let's put them in the backlog. Or let's schedule them for late April or May when my time has not yet been planned, or whenever you hadn't planned. But I'm sorry, I can't prioritize this above the work and deadlines I already have. And so, something along those lines. And if they say, well, this is your new top priority, I usually say, will you put that in writing? Because if I get judged by my manager or your manager, or a leader looks at our project and wonders why design didn't get stuff done, I'd like to have something in writing from you that says you changed my priorities. Can you give me that? No, just do it. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to do that. The priorities I have in writing and the plan I have in writing indicate that this is what I'm working on now. This is what I'm working on next. Diana says, the most difficult thing in these situations is probably not losing your cool and being able to voice everything calmly. Diana's really hit it on the head. And that was something I had to practice a lot growing up in a household of narcissists, was I found that when I was emotional or upset, positive emotions, negative emotions, these did not register with the narcissists in my world. If I was feeling negatively, the malignant narcissists were happy that they had hurt me, and the regular narcissists were just confused. So I definitely developed a much colder, unemotional, factual, logical, hard to argue with style, because I found that just went over best, because the narcissists didn't care if I had feelings, and the malignant narcissists in my family rejoiced at my pain. So it was best to just be able to approach this more neutrally, more calmly, and just say, I'm sorry, but that doesn't work. Thank you for coming to me with this work. I'm happy that we can partner together when you feel like you'd like a designer to work on something, but unfortunately, now is not going to be the right time to take that work on. I am booked through March, through April, through Q2, through whatever. We already have our roadmap and our projects established, and if you would like me to work on this, I'll happily schedule it for July. I'm sorry, but I cannot prioritize your new idea or your new whatever over our existing priority projects. And if they say no, do it anyway, or just do it on the side. I'm sorry, there is no side. And I'm sorry, I just can't. And I remember I had a narcissist at Macy's, another product manager narcissist, ask me to design what was in her head. Unfortunately, what was in her head was a really bad design. It was not going to work. I even went to my lead and I said, so-and-so wants me to design this. And my lead was like, oh no, that's a bad solution. Please don't do that. And when I went back to the narcissist product manager and I said, I'm not going to design that. I'm going to continue with the designs that I've been working on. And I've even escalated this to my lead, and my lead agrees with me. And the narcissist said, well, if you don't have time to work on it, I guess I'll just have to work on it myself. And I said, no, it sounds like you haven't heard me. It's not that I don't have time for it. We will not be pursuing your designs. We have found 7 reasons why your idea is not the right idea, and we're not going to do it. And she kept pushing and kept pushing and kept pushing. And finally, my lead said, look, why don't you design what she said, and next to it we'll write the 7 reasons why it's a design we're not pursuing, and that way we can document the design we're not doing and she can at least see it. And I said, okay, but I know the narcissist playbook, and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen next, and I'll put a $10 bet on it. I said, she's going to screenshot the wireframe, cut out the 7 reasons why we're not doing it, and announce that we're going to be following her designs. Now, my lead was very good friends with the narcissist, and she felt like she knew her really well. You know where my story's going. And she said, oh, I will take that bet. No way would she do that. No, that would be too disrespectful. No, she won't do that. I'll take your $10 bet. Well, guess what? Oh, hi there. Guess what? The next time we had a team meeting, she had cut out the wireframe of her idea, and she said, this is the direction we're going in. These are the wireframes we'll be using. I immediately blew up in the meeting. And I said, you have taken that out of context. That was on a screen of ideas we are not pursuing, to document ideas we did not pursue. That idea was next to 7 reasons why we are not pursuing this. And how dare you isolate the idea from the rest of the page that explained why this is not an idea that we are pursuing. She abruptly ended the meeting. She went to my manager to complain about me, and I went to my manager and I said, here's what's going on. Because the manager was like, did you blow up at her in the meeting? And it's like, okay, I kind of blew up at her in the meeting. I'm sorry, but here's what she's doing. And he was like, she did what? And I was like, yep. He said, oh, send me everything you have. I'm going to her manager. So I've seen these things. I don't always win these battles, but especially because of the environment in which I grew up in, I'm not afraid to take them on directly. Amy says, this person had poorly thought out ideas and couldn't answer why we should add or change something. The person also did Frankenstein screenshots. Yeah, I had another project at Macy's where someone came to me and said, this is the design I want to do. Can you like reverse engineer use cases to prove why we should do it this way? And I said, that's not how UX works. We don't reverse engineer use cases. If we can't find real user needs, and we solve the problem from the user needs, I don't want to just make a design we like and try to find reasons to do it. And she's like, yeah, but we really should do this. I said, well, let me do a little digging. I had recently inherited that project. So I went back to the department and I said, who used to work on this department? And so said, oh, I used to work on that. I said, do you know anything about these designs or this request? And she said, she's still doing that? I said, what? She said, yeah, she tried to get me to do that 2 years ago. I said, yeah, now she's trying to get me to do it. Wah, wah. KB points out something important that we need to say out loud before we wrap up our show for today. So let's give it a little background music. KB says something to think about too is that it's not your fault you're in this situation, and maybe you've done everything you can do to make it better. We often feel like it's our fault that things aren't improving because it gives us a sense of control, believing it's on us to fix it. But it's okay to cut yourself some slack and acknowledge that the situation is difficult and it's not your fault. Just throwing that out there. Yep, reminds me of some of the first few pages of Customers Know You Suck, where I said, put your own oxygen mask on first. Yeah, this is the music. This is Quit Forever by Toehider, who did our other theme song as well, except he didn't write this one for us. He wrote the theme song for us. So I am going to wind down this show. Thanks for all of the great conversations. We'll continue them, I'm sure, in our Discord. Come and join our Discord community. It's completely free. dcx.to/discord, and make sure you check out our upcoming conference, which is totally live and online. It's designed to be affordable. It's late May. You can find it linked from dcx.com. I hope people will sign up. I want to see 3 sign-ups right now. Go for it. So I'm going to play us out of here and get ready for my next meeting. Everyone have a super week. I will be broadcasting again next Wednesday. I don't think we have a Tuesday show next week either. Thanks. Bye.